first time I've gone live on my phone, but hey, we're going to do it and we'll see what happens. So for some reason, my computer is giving me some troubles. This is our monthly get together for answering questions. This is from the Patreon Club. So I just want to say thanks so much to everybody that's on the Patreon Club. I could not do this without you. You are a huge, huge help. And you are helping a lot of programs that I am behind to get done without me having to make a lot of money on it. The Breathwork Tactics program is a great example. This is a program that provides the people that we depend on most, right? So first responders, it provides them with science-based tools for nervous system regulation. These are more than just, hey, do a little something to calm down. These are things to help them with a lot of the trauma and the things that they go through on their just daily life through their careers. And then also in the moment so that they can focus, they can de-escalate, they can make better decisions during those times. Hey, Paul, nice to have you here. Oh, hey, thank you so much. I was just talking about the Breathwork Tactics program. And so thanks everybody that's in the Patreon Club for helping to make this happen, because you have to understand these are the issue here in the United States. We don't really pay our first responders very well, at least not as well as we should. And there's a lot of times budget issues. So we're always working around a lot of stuff like that. So I just want to thank the Patreon Club for all of your support, because you are making this possible. The other thing I do want to say is that right now, if you go to Amazon, you can get my book on Kindle, The Language of Breath, for only $1.99. So right now, my book was picked as it was a very special book. It was picked as one of the deals that they're doing right now for authors, and I'm excited about that. So if you haven't already picked up a copy of The Language of Breath, you can go for $1.99 on Kindle, or it's also on sale. If you'd like to if you're like me, I like the paperback version. I'm the type of guy, I don't know about you, but I like to mark up in the book. I like to circle things. I like to take the highlighter. I like to get the most out of my book. And so if you're like me and you like the paperback, that is also on sale. So this month, and it's not the whole month, but it's most of the rest of the month. I don't remember the exact dates, and my computer for some reason is not working. It had to do like updates suddenly. Of course, whenever I was on, I was doing a live. Suddenly, now it's time to do an update. So I'm on my phone. It all works out. I just can't look at those exact dates. But if you go to Amazon right now, you can get Language of Breath, both the Kindle version and the paperback version, for a really big discount, and that's just this month. So if you haven't already bought it, head over there. It makes a great gift too. Lastly, if you guys are, and I'm going to get to some questions. I got a really good question, like a triggering pet peeve question. I hate using that word trigger. It's overused nowadays. But this is a mint, by the way. I just had to have a little something. But yeah, I hate saying the word trigger these days because it leads to all sorts of things. But I do occasionally get triggered by these questions, especially a question about rewiring our brains and all the things that go along with that. So I'm going to get to those questions in just a minute. I hope you stick with me, because we're going to have a lot of fun today. And by the time this live is over, I guarantee you my computer will be up and running so we can have the monthly breath party on Patreon. So let's see here. Easier to say than stress inducing. Oh my gosh. Yes, exactly. So the last thing I want to just announce before we get into the questions is that right now, you may have heard of Mike Mayer from Take a Deep Breath. He is infinitely bigger YouTuber than I am. But he and I have been deciding, we're like, you know what? We should work together and make the world's best breathwork retreat that you could possibly have. So we did a poll recently to see who would be cool going where, what people's budgets are, what times of year are the good times of year. And so we got some good data. And of course, we're going to still continue to take your data if you want to tell us more about that. You can always reach out, but that will be something we're going to look into doing in 2025. So if you are looking to have, and this is, I mean, there's awesome breath retreats. Like I've got things here in the United States, but we're talking about, let's go take an adventure. Let's go take an adventure and deep dive into breath work like you've never breathed before. We're going to do ice bathing. We're going to do a bunch of other meditation stuff. I mean, it's going to be really cool. Yoga, things like that. But we're actually in the process of kind of like dreaming it up. So if you have suggestions, if you have things that you would like to see in the ultimate breathwork retreat, definitely hit me up. Go to jessecoomer.com and hey, get on my mailing list and you'll find out more about it as it comes out. But right now we're in the process of kind of developing this thing. So I love dreaming these things up. So having said that, let's get to the questions. We've got only two questions this month, but we got a doozy. We got a real doozy this time, as we say in the Midwest, because this question, the first question is the one that I'm talking, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to say I'm getting triggered all the time and things, but I am the type of guy, there are occasionally these things that are just really pet peeves of mine. And in the breathwork world, there's so many things that you'll hear repeated, and people repeat these things and then eventually they become true. And there's so much just total garbage out there. There's so much stuff that gets repeated, and it's nonsense. So this one is one of them that I want to talk about. So there is a conception that you can rewire your brain using breath work. And so let's talk about this. So I want to thank Emery for this question from our Patreon club. Thank you, Emery. And the question is ultimately, he was saying, he keeps hearing all these, a lot of people saying, you can rewire your brain. And I love Emery. Thank you so much for asking it in this way, but because the way he asked it is, he says, what does that even mean? And it's powerfully true, right? What does it even mean if you were to say, we're going to rewire your brain using breath work? And there's a lot of breath workers out there that you go to their breath work. That's how they market their breathwork session. Come to this one event. We're going to rewire your brain with breathwork. We're going to send you out. They use words like reset. They use a lot of words that you hear kind of repeated over and over again. What does this even mean? So on the one hand, there is a thing called neuroplasticity, right? And using what we know about neuroplasticity, we know that, yes, there are changes that we can make in our brain based off of how we use our brain, thought patterns, patterns of movement. For instance, if you learn how to play guitar, you will create new neural pathways within your brain. And the more you play it, those neural pathways, they become tiny they go from tiny pathways to really large highways. And, you become good at something. And it's the same with weightlifting. It's the same with all these things. You build new pathways in your brain. And if you want to say that is what you mean by rewiring your brain, that's still not what we do with breath work. Okay? That right there, when it comes to rewiring the brain, that is the best definition that I can come up with if I'm trying to think about whenever we say, let's rewire the brain. Okay, we're using neuroplasticity. We're going to build new habits. We're going to build new ways of thinking. Now, okay, let's take it one step further. Let's suppose that what a person means by we're going to rewire the brain is, okay, you've got so you're going to use breath work to create a better relationship with yourself. Okay, so we're going language of breath style here. Okay, if you haven't read the book, it's my thesis on breath work. So the professor handed in his thesis. But ultimately, if you're using breath work to create a better relationship, a better conscious and unconscious relationship within yourself, so that you can make those better actions on a regular basis, so that you can feel more comfortable to make those changes in your life and those changes in your habits, in the way that you think, and the way that you interact with the world. Okay. In that respect, maybe you could say we are rewiring our brain in some way, because we're using breath work to influence how we feel and change our state, right? To influence our state in order to do these things and feel comfortable and safe and doing all these other things. Okay, maybe we're getting a little closer, but that's not what I see so often on social media. That's not what I see so often on YouTube. That's not what I see so often. What I see so often is, okay, this one breathing technique or this one breathing session, you come here and you do this meditation and you're going to rewire your brain. You're going to go out of here and it's all going to be different. And that is not what breath work is, my friends. When we work with breath work, okay, so right now I'm in the middle of teaching the 2024 class of the Language of Breath Collective. Okay, so this is a group of people who want to take a deep dive in how all of it works, not just the basic principles of autonomic nervous system interaction, but also all these conscious and unconscious processes that are interplaying together at all times, how they affect your moods, how they affect your emotional states. I mean, we go deep, right? And we were talking about this. And when it comes down to the claim that this one meditation or this one breathwork session or whatever you want to call it is going to change your brain and you're going to walk out of here a different person, that is, first of all, what if that were true? What if that were true? Boy, you better not mess it up. Better not mess it. I hope you're doing it right. Imagine if that were possible to, whenever I think about rewiring the brain, I think about completely changing how it works. Like if you were to rewire an electrical grid, or that you're taking something out here and you're putting things in different places. Imagine if that were possible. That would be so dangerous. And there are some breath workers out there that are using subliminal messaging. I don't know if you've seen this. And they brag about it. They're like, yes, we use subliminal messages. There's some of these different styles out there that are using a lot of things that I don't think you really want, my friend. And if you really want it, boy, you better trust that guide. You better trust that guide a lot. Steve or Paul, you say, I think you could tie it in amazingly to language of breath. Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I've been talking for a minute. Teach breath work for yoga. When you do yoga using breath work, do sauna, explain nasal breathing and how it changes the temperature. Oh, you ran out of letters. Yeah, so ultimately, when we're thinking about rewiring the brain, we would love, the idea, I guess the dream behind it is that you're going to rewire it for the better, and that it's somehow magically going to transform me into, and of course there's all kinds of words that people use, like higher self and authentic me and all these things, when in reality, this is how we use breath work. Okay, so in the language of breath, in breathwork tactics, in any of the programs that I design, any of the programs that I teach, all of my breath workers learn some of these foundational things about how to use breath work. You have to understand, breath work is not going to make your life better. It will help you make your life better. Okay, and I'll say that again because it's so important. Breath work is not going to make your life better. You are the one. I'm not going to say it again. I'm going to extrapolate. You are the person who makes your life better. It is your actions, it's your attitudes, it's all these things. That's what makes your life better. It's not, oh, I do whatever technique or method or style every morning when I wake up, therefore my life is better. The things that make meaningful change in your life are your actions. When we use breath work, at least when I use breath work with my clients, when I use breath work with all my students, and they go out with their clients, our main focus is learning about, okay, what is going on with this individual, this human being that's in front of me, who is not a clone, not a robot, not a tree. This is an individual person, 37.2 trillion cells, who is unique. How can I work with this person to help them feel safe enough to take the actions that they need to take in their lives to improve their lives? You're not going to get a better job or meet the right spouse or have, a better relationship with your child simply because you sat down and you did a bunch of breath work in the morning. You're not going to get better grades on your schoolwork or have a better run time simply because of this breathing technique you did. It has to be the thing that helps you take the action. Your actions are what makes your life better. And so when we think about this concept of rewiring our brains, oh my gosh, there is so much that we would love. Oh, I would love it if somehow there was some magical way. Because I think what happens is we think about it in a way that's like, okay, maybe there's some kind of magical thing that would just make me smarter, better, better looking, etc. And the reality is that you have to work for those things. You simply have to work for those things. And when we use breath work, we use it as a method of speaking within this conversation, this relationship that is you, because you're never just having a singular experience. You're having this dual experience of reality. And as you go through life, you're going to have different things come in. Your unconscious self is going to be thinking different things. It's going to be interpreting life in different ways. And so it's so important to remember that there's no one breath session that's going to somehow rewire your brain. When we think about rewiring your brain, I think so many people think that if I just breathe this way or if I do these magical things, somehow I'm getting an upgrade. Somehow, because we see ourselves as machines. And I talk about this in my book, Language of Breath. We see ourselves as, okay, I'm a computer that drives around this robot. You are not that. You are not a machine. And so thinking that you're going to do something with it, you're going to, up, down, left, right, A, B, whatever, start. I don't remember the exact Contra code. Does anybody remember the exact Contra code? But if you think that is possible, the problem is a lot of times, if that were possible, think how dangerous that is. And so fortunately, the human organism has a lot of built-in safety mechanisms, and it takes time, it takes effort, it takes repeated efforts to do. Paul knows it. Hell yeah, Paul. I want to play video games with you. Is anybody playing Fallout again, by the way? Because now it's with the show that came out, it's super big. Anybody doing that one? Anyway, so anyway, when it comes back to rewiring your brain, here's the thing. Stop looking for that kind of shortcut, right? Because that's what it is. It's a person looking for a shortcut. They don't want to do the work. It comes down to your actions every day. That's what's making your life better. And breath work is just a tool to help you feel more comfortable and more able to do that. Yes, we can enhance some of our physiology, but if you don't have the willpower, I don't care how enhanced your physiology is, if you don't have the willingness to get out there and take actions, I mean, we can give you the Ferrari of a body and it still won't matter. Paul, okay, so you didn't play the first time around, but you want to play now. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I know that, Guru. You were told that 2 breathwork sessions away from enlightenment. There you go. Hey, Dana, nice to have you here. So, and this is actually, I mean, if you look back the history of breathwork, sadly enough, it comes from a lot of that kind of thinking. There are schools of breathwork that made, Leonard Orr, rebirthing, which is a wonderful breathwork experience, but he made the claim that if you did rebirthing and you lived according to the elements, then you would have physical immortality. That's quite a claim. I reached out to him when I was writing my first book, A Practical Guide to Breathwork, because I was writing in that book, there's a short history of breathwork in the West. And of course, he had already passed. Like, he had just recently passed on whenever I reached out. I mean, that was quite a claim, but a lot of people bought into it because we love to believe these secrets exist. and hey, maybe there is a secret or something that exists, right? But ultimately, the truth that we're usually trying to avoid is the fact that we have to take actions. Okay. So anyway, that is Emery's question about rewiring your brain. Can we rewire our brain? What does it even mean? Most of the time, it is a bunch of people who are trying to trick you into believing in something that they're doing, trying to trick you into spending money with them. They're hoping for the placebo effect to make you feel like, well, maybe I do feel like my brain is rewired now. Yes, I feel like I've rewired my brain after that session. That's what that is. And in reality, language of breath, I mean, it's pretty sexy. I will say language of breath is pretty damn sexy if you're a science and a science nerd, if you're a person who really, the way I look at what a human being is that I think there's so much more profundity than a lot of this other esoteric stuff that we love to think is so profound. If you just look at what we are, there is an incredible amount of profundity there that I don't think we acknowledge because we keep coming up with all these other flighty, hoity-toity things. And so when it comes down to rewiring your brain, again, it's using a metaphor. We use a lot of metaphors. This is a metaphor that has been overused, misused, or abused, and it should not be used anymore. So there it is. There it is. Thank you so much for that question, Emery. The next question comes from Sebastian. First of all, okay, before I get into Sebastian's question, let's see. We got so Paul, you're watching the Fallout series. I remember, so just to give you guys a little background. So when I was in my let's see how much phone battery life I have. Cool, I'm good. So when I was in my late 20s, when my entire 20s pretty much, I was an opioid addict. And so that was a lot of fun. I mean, not really. I mean, there were some fun times, but usually they get diminished. And one of the things that happened to me was that I got laid off. So I was working for a major corporation in Nashville, Tennessee, and I got laid off, which turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me because it allowed me to look at my life and reevaluate. And it's whenever I decided I was going to walk away from addiction, I was going to improve my life. So it was a really profound time for me, but it also was the time when Fallout 3 came out, and I played that game so much. And so when it comes to the Fallout show and all that, so I'm super into it. And if you follow me on Instagram, I've made some breathwork inspired Fallout memes that I'm pretty proud of, to be honest. I'm pretty proud of them. Okay, next question from Sebastian. And by the way, thank you, Emery, for that question. Thank you for triggering me, Emery, because I really appreciate that. Okay, Sebastian asks, so this is a question specifically about the language of breath. And he says, why does the language of breath focus so much on interoception? Now, Sebastian, first of all, I do want to remind you, just in case you haven't already purchased the book where I explain this, it is on sale right now on Amazon. So there's a huge discount on Amazon on the print copy and on the Kindle. The Kindle's only like $2 if you want to just get the Kindle version. I think the print version is like $15 or $17 or something I forget exactly what it is, but there's a pretty big discount on it, like literally right now during this month. So check that out. And I go into greater detail. There's a whole bibliography at the end of all my research, and there is a book extras link that you can follow that will take you to an even deeper bibliography of a lot of the research that I've used in coming up with. And the funny thing is, I did not set out. I just want to make this clear. I did not go and say, okay, I'm going to sit down and create my own breathwork philosophy. I never wanted to do that. I started breathwork. Sadly enough, I fell for a lot of gurus early on in my career. And actually this channel was originally dedicated to one of those gurus. And A lot of people are like, hey, do this, style or method or whatever, and it's the be all end all. And I never really intended to come up with the language of breath. I never intended to come up with my own philosophy of breath work. It's just that over time, as I got deeper and deeper into it, I started to realize, okay, let's see. I guess I zonked out there. So I'm on my phone. I hope it doesn't overheat. Let's see. Yeah, it's getting a little warm. Let's see here. Let me try this. Here we go. Okay, good. Hey, V. Thomas, nice to have you here. Anyway, so I never intended to create the language of breath. I didn't say, hey, I'm going to create a philosophy of breath work. It just happened. And it happened, the way a lot of things happen. It wasn't like I just decided to do it. I started with, learning pranayama, Wim Hof, Oxygen Advantage, a lot of the big ones out there. And then I started kind of chasing down all these different ones, Sudarshan Kriya. I started messing with different elements of rebirthing, holotropic breath work, athletic breath work. I started training a lot of different clients. And see, when I first started training one-on-one clients, I was just like in these, like, it's almost like a cult-like devotion to certain breathwork styles. And I noticed that none of the tools that I had were really working as well as I wanted them to, or as I thought they were supposed to. And for some people, it was fantastic. A lot of other people, it was like, meh. So I had to do a lot of experimenting and a lot of research on my own. And you may know, I was just telling about my recovery story from drug addiction. You might know that after so as I was coming out of drug addiction, so I titrated off, and it took me an entire year to do it. But I did this all, and I'm not saying this is the way people should do it, but this is just how I did it. I was just like, okay, I got myself in this mess. I can get out of this mess myself. And so I just reduced my dose over the course of a year, which was like one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. And if you're trying to overcome addiction, let me just tell you, if I can do it, you can do it. It's nothing special about me. But what happened was I became as I was getting off of my addiction, I said, one thing I know I need to do, instead of trying to not be an addict anymore, I need to try to do something with my life. Because what I've seen so often is a person who quits an addiction, they will, instead of doing something else, their entire rest of their life is not being an addict anymore. And I was like, okay, I think that's a recipe for disaster with me. I don't want to constantly focus on what I'm not anymore. So I am going to try to do something and that I can be proud of. So I went to grad school. In my first year of grad school, I was still an active addict, reducing my dose every day as best I could. And I became an English professor. So I became an English professor in research and rhetoric. So what that means is that's a kind of, it's an area where it's basically you research and you try to figure out how to explain things. That's what research and rhetoric is all about. So yes, I eventually did teach some literature classes, and that's a lot of fun. But my main goal was learning how to do good research and how to explain things to people and myself in ways that are understandable. So that's a long way of me getting to the point where I'm telling you, when I was getting into my breathwork practice, I was coaching. I was a few years into being a professional, and I got an NASM personal trainer license, and I was getting different kinds of certifications. And a lot of people will collect a lot of certifications. I was starting to do that. I started to see how a lot of things were working together, but the way we see the human organism was sort of getting in the way, I think. And so I did a lot more research. I kept on doing more research. And what I eventually came up with was the language of breath, which the very start, and this is why it's sometimes difficult for me to explain what the language of breath actually is. The foundation of the language of breath is that the mind-body paradigm that we're always in is flawed. So it limits us. so this mind body thing where it's like, okay, it's sort of like there's a border here at the neck. So there's my mind, and there's my body, and we've been hinting at this for decades now, that the mind and the body are the same thing. We know that your emotional state and your physiological state, it's not like these things aren't completely intertwined. And so I was like, okay. And so then I got into Vivation. So I met Paul Hughes of Vivation. I read the book about Vivation. I think that's on Amazon if you want to check that out. And I was doing it wrong. I was doing Vivation completely wrong, but it hit on some things that I was already kind of into. If you read my first book, you can start to see. So if you read A Practical Guide to Breathwork, you can start to see where I was. I was already sort of getting closer to language of breath, but I wasn't quite there yet, because I knew that the key to it was inner awareness. Interoception is the more sciencey term for it, but ultimately the ability for a person to become aware. And so I started getting into Vivation, and I was like, why does this work so well? And even though I wasn't doing it right. And then I stumbled across a scientific paper by Dr. Cynthia Price, and that changed it. It kind of validated a lot of the things that were swirling around in my mind. And so Dr. Cynthia Price is a research psychologist in the Pacific Northwest in the United States. And she has developed a form of, basically it is a form of therapy that is sustained interoceptive awareness. There's a certain process, and I went and trained with her as well. And so I got to meet my hero. It was really cool. But what that did for me, it really unlocked a lot of the science behind the conscious and the unconscious. And I started to really lean into that. And that's when I realized, okay, so there's something new. I'm going to have to add to the conversation. And that's a wonderful place to be, but it was not where I intended to be. So that is the reason why I say all this, Sebastian. Thank you for this question, is because ultimately, I believe that awareness, so the sense of internal awareness, the term is interoception. So I believe that interoception is actually more important in the field of breath work than breathing techniques themselves. And this is after years of practice. I've been a professional now in the space for 8 years, and I've been practicing much longer than that myself and in circles. I've been very fortunate to make friends and colleagues, have mentorships through people who are like in neuroscience and in other fields that are adjacent. And so I was like, man. And so we've known about, the crazy thing is, all I did, and it's not like I'm special and I'm not a guru, and I didn't come up with these breathing techniques by, one day I was out in cold or in the nature or whatever. What happened was all I did was, it was over time, I started to see some patterns and I started to put some things together, and I realized, okay, this is actually, I think, what we're working with. For the last majority of time, we thought we were working with these things here, and we are working with a lot of these things here, but the big picture is over here. And so that is what the language of breath philosophy is all about. That's what my whole message is. And so you were under an apple tree. Oh yeah. The heavens parted and suddenly, I'm the guru. In fact, I've been burned by guru worship, and in my journey to get where I am right now, I've joined multiple groups. I've been a part of a lot of groups, and it seems like it is difficult for leaders in the breathwork world not to get that guru complex. So in my breathworker school, I have put things in place that as the language of breath grows, and every year our classes get bigger, our message is growing. This year we have people from five different countries that are in our breathworker program. We're going to be going into multiple different languages. My book is being translated to multiple languages, so it is growing. And hey, I'd love to have you join the collective. But the thing that I wanted to make sure is, like, I don't want to have this guru thing. So, because I think it's just part of everybody is, and it is part of our unconscious. It's difficult for us to sound the alarm bells whenever we should sound the alarm bells. And we teach a lot about ethics in the Language of Breath Breathworker School. So, so I have faculty. I don't have underlings and people who are like my disciples, or, you've worked your way up into, you're clear now, or whatever. I don't know, whatever these sort of religious connotations, the levels and things like that. Nope. So I've got faculty, and we are all teachers, and we're teaching this philosophy of breath work, and it works. And it's more holistic and insightful than the old model. So we're just wanting to bring this new model to fruition and empower breath workers to use it in a really deep and profound way. So when we use interoception, the reason why it's so important, coming back to the question. So thank you, Sebastian, for this question. The reason why, hey, thank you, Paul. The reason why interoception is so important is because it is the way we are able to hear the voice of the unconscious. And that might sound woo-woo. It is not. This is when I talked about it before. The profundity of what we actually are is so much more profound, in my opinion at least, than all of these different ways we've used to describe ourselves in the past. I really do feel like we've done our best throughout all of human history to describe what we are and what this experience is. But I really do believe, and this is based off of my own personal experiences delving into it, I really do believe it's even more profound than that. And there have been some of the most profound instances I've ever had, some of the most profound experiences I've ever had. And we're talking about way beyond, doing ayahuasca or whatever. Not that I've never done ayahuasca. I really don't have any desire to, because I already have I'm able to, if I really focus on it. It's not easy to do, okay? But we teach this in the language of breath. Ultimately, when there are some times when you actually somehow are able to touch in a way, and I'm using metaphor here because it's really hard to describe. It's like you're touching or you're coming in contact with your unconscious. And I think this is something that a lot of people have had experiences with. And the funny thing is, it's very familiar, but it's not. It's this strange, very familiar feeling. It's like a part of you that man, I'm so familiar with this part of this, whatever it is that I'm contacting here, but it's a little different. And what it is your unconscious. It literally is you. It's just that part of you that you don't normally have conscious access to. And I think a lot of cult leaders tap into this, and they'll say, "No, it's my method or technique or style, or it's my, fill in the blank esoteric jargon." And that's not to say I am, have no, there's no spiritual side to life, or I'm not to say that, but I think what we are as human organisms is so profound that a lot of times when we actually come in contact with it, we mistake it for something outside of ourselves when it actually is us becoming more in contact with ourselves. And so I that is why interoception is so important, because when you master interoception, and believe me, I am not a master of interoception. I am a practitioner. I am doing my best. There are, I'm sure, lots of people way better than I am at inner awareness, right? I practice every day. I do my very best. But I will say that what I believe, what I really feel that is true, and it's based off of decades of research and decades of scientific data. I personally believe that when we when we develop that internal awareness and we marry that with our breath, we can start to interchange. We can have this exchange between conscious and unconscious like we never thought we could before. If you take a look at most books that talk about the unconscious you, and of course, everybody always gets uncomfortable when I say unconscious. So a lot of people prefer subconscious, but I mean, there's a lot more to you than that. There's a lot more to your unconscious than just the subconscious. When you start to read books about this, they make it very clear that there's no way you can interact with this part of yourself. It is hermetically sealed. And it's very true. You can't control that part of yourself. But guess what? I can interact with you, and I have no conscious access to your mind. I have no conscious access to any aspect of you. All I can do is parse out what you're saying by the signals that you send me. That is the language of breath. The language of breath is learning how to decipher those signals and learning how to send signals back in the one way that I know how to do it, the most effective way that I know how to do it. That is the language of breath. So Sebastian, I want to thank you for that question. Sometimes it really helps me, and you know, I'm hopefully these helped you, but it really helps me to get these questions so that I have to sit here and think about how am I going to answer this question. I'm the type of person who I love doing research. I love writing books. I love creating. And oftentimes it's hard for me to explain what it is I'm creating. I was the same way with it as a musician. What kind of music do you play? And of course, if you're a musician, you know how that goes. Paul says, ayahuasca is extreme and should be done rarely, if at all. I have done it. Yeah, I've done, psilocybin. I did a whole lot of that in the 90s. It's like the 90s. I did a lot of LSD. I did a lot of psilocybin. We ate, I forget. It was like morning glories and LSA or what. I mean, there's a bunch of other things. And those can give you some really profound insights, and there can be really profound experiences that you can have. But when it comes down to it, it's, what can you take with you? And that's the thing. So many people, and this goes back to Emery's question earlier on, can we rewire our brain with breath work? Emery, his question was more like, hey, what does that mean? But a lot of people want to they think they're going to take, plant medicine, right? And rewire their brain in just one session. And there's plenty of, anecdotal evidence, people saying that that's true. And I hope it does help people like that in a positive way. I also know lots of people who have really had terrible experiences. We don't talk about those so often, right? And it's one of those things where it's the same with breath. It's the same with so many other things. We all love the idea of shortcuts. We all love the idea of some kind of secret knowledge that we can have access to. And I know I have fallen for that so many times in my life that it's ridiculous, actually, how many times I've fallen for that. And so I understand the draw, but believe me, the way that we make our lives better, the way that we improve our lives is from our actions. And there's a lot we can do to have an interplay with the part of us that typically we have to have there in order to do those actions. So your unconscious is there, and it's not this bad guy, it's not this good guy, it is you. And it is, if you're going to make positive change, you have to have the unconscious you on board. You can't unconsciously hate every second of it or be afraid of something and expect to get, the results that you would like to get out of there. So yeah, Eric, I was in the 90s. In the 90s, there was a whole bunch of LSD in Indiana. Or at least where I live in Indiana. And so I did a lot of that. And guess what? I didn't become some kind of, wizard or whatever. People act like they're, it's like, yes, man. We always think about the answer being outside and some kind of thing where there's a shortcut. I think it was Jung who said, beware of unearned wisdom. And I think it's very true. If you think that you're going to have any of those things where it's just going to shortcut you to this blissful, awesome life or characteristics, then you're going to be sorely mistaken. You're going to be really upset and disappointed, because even if that were the case, and I know we would all love to win the lottery, but even if that were the case, the feeling and the knowing that you've earned it is also something that you can't buy. And any wisdom that I might have claimed over my 43 years has come from making every mistake that is in the book and trying to learn from it. And many times, having a pity party and learning from that, because learning how useless and futile those pity parties are. Paul says, fail fast. And no one wants to do that, because failing sucks, right? But it's not failure if you learn from it. And this is where the language of breath, this is where that conscious and that unconscious you have to start to have a better relationship, because that unconscious sees failure as the end of your life-ending thing. This is the worst thing that could happen. It's because the unconscious is still playing by the old game plan, right? So go buy my book. It's cheap right now on Amazon, but I'll give you this as well. The old game plan is still the game plan that you're born into, right? And that is, all harm is deadly. And that can be, someone making fun of you. That can be someone pointing a gun at you. That can be all these things where we see anything that is uncomfortable as a possible death, and we just can't stand that. So, hey, I just want to thank everybody for being here. I'm about to switch over to the Patreon Club. If you haven't joined the Patreon Club, today is a great day to join. For just $5, you can get in, and we are having the very next hour is our Zoom breath party. And then you also get access to the full, all the catalog of pre-recorded breath sessions, all those things. Also a really cool community that continues to grow of people around the world who are into what you're into. They're weirdos just like you and me. So I want to thank everybody for being here. Definitely like, subscribe, come back, join the Breath Club, send me more questions. Hey, Paul, always good to see you here. Eric, good to have you here. Dana, nice seeing you. V. Thomas, always good to see you here. Thanks everybody for being in the club and for watching, and I'll see you next time.